interest comes out of psychology, and so it's pretty focused on the individual. So we've tried to stretch it to think about interest as a family phenomenon. And what would it look like if we conceptualize interest as developing across both parents and kids? And so that's the way we've tried to push this idea of interest, that some of these aspects of interest, like the emotional feeling we get when we're excited about something, can be felt by both the parent and the child, but some parts of it might be relegated to the parent, like awareness that some interest is developing. Like the child might not think, oh, I'm into birds, but the parent sees that and they say, oh, an interest in birds is developing, and I'd like to reinforce that. So then as both the adult and child change together, they form this family interest pathways that's sort of self-motivating. So someone might enjoy a visit to a science center and really get into an exhibit around birds, and then you know, in a couple weeks maybe they go outside and they see some more birds and have a conversation about that, and then they decide to buy some binoculars and they get into looking at birds with those, and then they join a group, a birding group. And so that series of experiences that forms sort of a coherent pathway to the learner and to us as the researchers might be what you call a pathway. I, like many people in the field, are very influenced by the four-phase model of interest development with Hitti and Redinger. So situational interest is often seen as the beginning of the interest development process in that model, where we get a spark of excitement or challenge or motivation in a particular moment with a particular object or topic or activity that we're engaging with it in that moment. And if that's maintained over time, then that sort of extends, but still it's being supported externally by other folks or by experiences. And then as we start to internalize that interest and start being motivated to engage with that topic or focus over and over again, motivated ourselves, then we start calling that an individual interest, which can extend over time. So that's the basic of that framework. And it also, that framework is nice because it shows how interest is a complex construct. So it starts with an emotion, but as it develops, it begins to bring in things like knowledge and values and self-awareness, and all of those things are fed by new interest experiences, and then they remotivate further interest experiences. A lot of people have focused on interest in the moment, situational interest, when they look at it, what happens at a museum visit, what happens when someone's doing an activity, what happens in a classroom when you're engaging with a particular topic. And we've really tried to make sure that we're capturing both those micro experiences and what interest looks like there, but then also connect it to longer term developing interest for that person or for that family. It's amazing how much you can learn putting on a video camera and watching a parent and a child, or a staff member, an educator interacting, staff member and a visitor interacting, to see how interests are happening in that moment. What is the interest that's sparked? What strategies are happening? But so you can get really, really detailed. And also that's a really nice lens because you can give specific guidance on what are the strategies that an educator or a parent might use. What's the thing you might actually say? But that lens tells you so little about what happened afterwards, how it related to what happened before, what might happen in 4 months. So then we back up and we're using surveys to understand those longer term pathways, but we're losing so much about the individual experiences that make up those pathways. So that's the trade-off there. And then particularly with us, with this new family interest system, it's really nice to be able to understand both what's happening with the parent and child and how those relate, but it makes data collection so much more complex. We really try to stress for researchers, we've tried to make the claim that you've got to look at both the parent and the child. But for practitioners, again, it's seeing that whole interest system. And if you're designing a program or you're thinking about connecting to a family, thinking about both how you're supporting the child, how you're supporting the parent, and how those two things interrelate. So it changes your perspective on the world and what kind of data you might collect or the type of program you might create. There's just so much evidence that continues to mount that interest drives human behavior. It drives what we choose to engage in, and related to other things like self-efficacy and identity, it really is the key to why people choose to stay engaged with science and why they choose to take another path. In the STEM education field, there's obviously a lot of pressure to think about the kids and what the kids are growing up to do. Are they prepared for school? What do they do outside of school? And how does that lead to lifelong STEM learning or lifelong engagement with STEM careers? So certainly we're interested in the family as a system in the ways that that system supports the kid. But you know, in the modern world, science is central to everything we do. It's central to our democracy, and understanding science is central to our democracy. So we always talk to families about how this engagement with science and this engagement with engineering, it's important for school, life, and work, all those things. I think one thing that's important for us as interest researchers to, or you know, practitioners using this lens, is that there's individual interest or there's family interest, but there's also a lot of social and cultural barriers to engaging with science and to accessing science. So it's important that we don't forget that just because someone's really interested in something doesn't mean the rest of the world is going to support them in that. And I think that's the tension in interest research is, yes, it's a driver of human behavior, but there's lots of other things that constrain human behaviors, especially in our society today.